Who are you? What are you made of? And where are you going? What will you make of yourself? Sometimes, the hardest questions are the ones you ask yourself. If you're lucky, the answers are easy to find. If you're smart, you'll start looking here at one of our 23 community colleges and more than 40 locations. To learn more, visit findyouranswer.com. Find your answer at Virginia's community colleges.
Low 50 cents, meaning that they've come down so far in price. We're looking at now an unprecedented third year in terms of loss for U.S. government bonds. That hasn't happened in the modern era. It hasn't happened in well over 65 years. You've actually lost money in government bonds for 3 years straight. And of course, you've lost money in bonds because interest rates have been going up. So you're really seeing tremendous pain. And it's not impossible to imagine, Frank, this spilling over into banks, just as it did at the beginning of this year, because people are sitting on tremendous unrealized losses in very safe U.S. government bonds.
We're on the air live with Jonathan Hoenig. And as far as that 60-40 traditional mix, then, given what's going on in the bond market, is that being revisited, Jonathan? And what are you telling the folks out there for their retirement funds, for example?
Well, I think you, first of all, always have to have that long-term view, Frank, and especially now when headlines are scary. I mean, you have to go back to your goals and have that long-term perspective. But in terms of putting new money to work, I do think now is a time to look, as they say, off the radar screen, because what's leading is no longer what has led in the past. For years we talked about the Magnificent Seven. It was technology. It was the FANG stocks, the AI-related stocks. And I'm seeing much more, for example, like the commodity-related names. We've talked about oil for the better part of a year now. We're starting to see a lot of the other commodities participate. So one very kind of pedestrian name in that space to own, I think, is DBC. That's David Boy Charlie. This is, if you will, Frank, think of it as like the Dow Jones of commodities. It's a broad index of commodities, and I do think that we're in an era now, an inflationary era, where you're going to see commodities outperform many stocks, many traditional equities. So I think that 60-40 portfolio that's very popular is probably going to underperform as some of these alternative assets, like emerging markets, like commodities, like even currencies, start to outperform.
You do a great job keeping track of all the ETFs and individual stocks. Any other specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Yeah, I mean, one name I've been surprised about, and one sector that's really been outperforming, Frank, is actually insurance. One of the few financial areas that have done well. In fact, Berkshire Hathaway, I know people have very mixed feelings about Warren Buffett. Berkshire Hathaway was actually at a 52-week high today. So IAK and KIE are two insurance ETFs I think you can buy right now. I mentioned the commodities index, and one other one is actually the Canadian dollar, Frank. Again, think of it in this venue of commodity-related instruments. FXC is one I like, and I'll give you one more as well. That's BOAT, B-O-A-T. This is a name, Frank, that holds a basket of shipping stocks. It has a massive dividend, about 15%. It's quite volatile, but I do think shippers have the pricing power in terms of inflationary. They can raise their rates fairly easily for shipping. So BOAT is one that I like. We own it at capitalistic.com as well.
All right. In case anybody missed it out there, Berkshire Hathaway Class A stock is the most expensive stock on the New York Stock Exchange. And you're right, hitting a new high today, up $3,300 to $562,800. Is that right? Something like that?
I believe so. They do have a B share as well, so you can get a piece of Berkshire for less than that. But I think it's a good indication that there are places to make money in this market, Frank. I mean, I think you could, as you said, look to some of the emerging markets. I mean, I think Colombian stocks. Again, it sounds pretty out there, but GXG is an ETF that trades just like a General Electric or Cisco or anything else. So I think now, especially is the time if you're looking to diversify. There's no real diversification between owning NVIDIA and Amazon. They tend to move the same. But adding some emerging markets, I think, like Colombia, like even some of the major emerging market indexes, is great for diversification at this time.
And you're right. There is a Class B, a Berkshire Hathaway Class B shares trading at $370 and change. They put out that Class B stock many years ago to make it more affordable for those that can't afford the $562,800 price tag on the Class A shares. So Warren Buffett looking out for the little guy here.
Yeah, and I mean, Look, the little guy has never had it easier, Frank. I mean, trading is free now. You don't even pay commission. There's all these different types of products available. I think more than anything, our listeners and investors writ large have to have that long-term perspective. And it's important, especially now when the headlines are scary and there's a lot of uncertainty. Oftentimes people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, Frank, they say they're in it for the long term, but then as soon as things get tight or the market gets uneasy, they cut and run. And I think it's why now more than ever, it's so important. We've always talked about this for years. The importance to have that your credit card debt paid down and to have that 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. I mean, think about all the folks on strike now. I mean, I hope they've got their credit card paid down and have living expenses, some emergency fund in the bank. That's exactly the kind of situation it's for. So, you're always you sleep better at night, Frank, when you've got no credit card debt and have some emergency fund put away. That'd be a great goal for everyone in 2024.
Certainly. And crypto's doing what they do. I've seen another volatile year. Right now, Bitcoin hovering above 26,000, coming off the high point of the year in the last couple of months. What about the cryptos here and how they've performed in all this?
Well, they've been down by about 20% in terms of Bitcoin in the last 6 months. So I'm very loath, Frank, to kind of try to pick bottoms. Oftentimes trends tend to persist in the market. Bitcoin has had a little bit of a bid as of late, but surprisingly, it's been one of the more quiet investments in the last couple of months and years. Some of the more quiet time in Bitcoin history, I believe. So I'm not a hater, but again, I mean, for years, Bitcoin was leading and everyone was very doubtful of it. And there's an old saying that bull markets are built on doubt, bear markets are built on hope. So my sense is there's a lot more hope for Bitcoin now than doubt. So I think I'd rather own other assets than try to take my chance on a weak Bitcoin.
All right. Here we are, September winding down, October right around the corner, and the holidays will be here before you know it. What about the retailers at this point?
It's very weak and pretty surprisingly weak, Frank. Today you saw Dollar General and Macy's and Sally Beauty Supply. They're not the major retailers, but three pretty prominent retailers all at 52-week lows. Even something like Chewy. Chewy is the online retailer for pet items. It's down 87% since the pandemic. It's at a new 52-week low today. So again, I mean, I'm not a Cassandra, but the consumer with that record credit card debt, record number of hardship withdrawals from his and her 401ks, the consumer is hurting, Frank. And it's not a surprise why. I mean, in the last 2.5 years, costs have gone up. Income has gone down when adjusted for inflation. So the retailers, actually, I think I'd rather own even something, like Egyptian stocks or gold, I think is a better buy right now than the retailers, which are pretty weak.
All right. And I don't think we've talked since Apple had that big announcement last week. What about Apple here?
Apple is a wonderful company, but I think, at least for now, it might be a broken stock. I mean, not because of anything they did, Frank, but just the nature of the markets. I mean, sometimes bell bottoms are in fashion, and when they're not, no one's wearing them. So that's my bold prediction, at least for the next couple of months, is technology, which led for so long, for years, really, and even for the better part of this year. I think technology is going to be outpaced by some of these alternative assets, mostly commodities, which, not unlike, let's say, the period of 2001 to 2010, trounced most U.S. stocks and U.S. indices. So I'd rather bet on gold than Apple. Magnificent company, but the stock is overdone at this point.
Jonathan Hoenig, Fox News contributor, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, and author of the book Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time, on Twitter at Jonathan Hoenig. Always appreciate the Twitter shout-outs. So, Jonathan, we have to do it before they start charging us on X, or Elon Musk talking about possibly charging folks.
You loved Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now get to know her on Give Them Lala.
I feel like I have friends in this camera.
I know. I love that you're looking at the camera. No, you do have friends.
No, I know.
Anyone
I feel
watching
like they're
you.
all here.
Yes.
We're all just hanging out. Ocean's very into thumbs up right now. And she's like this in her face. Thumbs up. We do it all the time. She loves that face.
I love that. Give one to your friends.
Watch what Lala is talking about on YouTube or search for Give Them Lala wherever you listen.
To use his platform there, so we'll keep doing it until the wheels come off before they start charging us, of course. Jonathan, thanks a million for coming on the air live with us here tonight. It's always great to have you with us.
My pleasure, Frank. Be well.
You're on 790 KABC. Folks, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. QC Kinetics can change your life. You can live again without that chronic joint pain and without drugs or surgery. Frank Mottek here. QC Kinetics is advanced regenerative medicine. They take your body's own concentrated healing properties and put them right into your joint to restore and repair that damaged joint tissue. It's causing all that horrible pain. The patient satisfaction reports are absolutely astonishing. Finally, a real alternative to the old ways of dealing with pain. And unlike surgery, there is no downtime with QC treatments. If you have constant pain in your knees, hips, shoulders, or back, you need to call and get a free consultation from the medical professionals at QC Kinetics today. Imagine this autumn moving around pain-free, doing things you love again. Walking, hiking, playing with your grandkids, you name it. Call QC Kinetics and see how the latest advances in precision regenerative medicine can attack your pain and bring you lasting relief. Call QC Kinetics, locations in Glendale, the city of Orange, Mission Viejo, now also in Costa Mesa. Call 213-997-PAIN, 213-997-PAIN. Again, that's 213-997-PAIN. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good evening. Stock market eking out slight gains at the closing bell today. The Dow up 6 points at 34,624. The S&P 500 up 3 at 4,453. And the NASDAQ closing just about 2 points higher at 13,710. The yield of the 10-year note at 4.30%. Mortgage rates continue to hover at or near 20-plus year highs. In the cryptos, we see Bitcoin down about $25 now at $26,737. Ethereum down 1 at $1,637. Doge at 6 cents. Apple shares ending higher by nearly 2% after the iPhone maker released its big software update today. U.S.-listed shares of chip design company ARM Holdings, which had that big IPO last week, closing down 4.5% after last week's successful trading debut. ARM began trading last Thursday, closed Friday at $60.75, 19% above the $51 IPO price. Shares of DoorDash, Class A shares, are finishing little change to 80 and change even after Mizuho upgraded the stock to buy. Clorox moving lower today by 2.5% after that company said a cybersecurity attack identified last month will have a material impact on fiscal first quarter results, according to MarketWatch. Yeah, Elon Musk, according to various reports, might flip the switch to make X, formerly known as Twitter, an entirely subscription-based platform. Elon Musk bringing up the idea of charging all users of X during a wide-ranging conversation that featured Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. He said, we're moving to a small monthly payment for use of the X system. That's what Elon Musk told Benjamin Netanyahu, claiming that it's the only way to eliminate the problem of bots, as reported by Bloomberg. Musk did not mention timing of the plan to charge Twitter or X users, nor did he say how much it would cost. According to Musk, X has 550 million monthly active users. Well, the big story, oil continues to soar above $90 a barrel in New York, and gas pumps here in Southern California noticing a big difference, up 72 cents a gallon over the past month. Regular now averaging $5.91 a gallon in the L.A. Long Beach area. Premium now $6.23, and diesel now at $6.40. We'll talk more about that coming up here shortly. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good evening. Well, in case you hadn't noticed, gas prices have soared here in Southern California as oil prices spiked and refinery issues apparently popping up again here in California, similar to what we saw last year, which, by the way, sent gas prices to record highs in L.A. last October. Meanwhile, California going after oil companies again. Coincidentally, California is suing 5 oil companies, claiming they misled the public somehow on the issue of climate change. And now the state wants a new fund created to address that issue. The state of California filing a lawsuit against some of the world's biggest oil and gas companies, claiming they deceived the public about the risk of fossil fuels now faulted for climate change-related storms and wildfires that caused billions of dollars in damage. The civil lawsuit filed in a state superior court in the Bay Area, also seeking creation of a fund financed by the oil companies to pay for recovery efforts following devastating storms and fires. Governor Newsom said in a statement the companies named in the lawsuit, ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and BP, should be held accountable. Now, the American Petroleum Institute, an industry group also named in the lawsuit, said climate policy should be debated in Congress, not the courtroom. We also got a statement from Shell, which said the courtroom is not the proper venue to address global warming, saying addressing climate change requires a collaborative society-wide approach. We agree that action is needed now on climate change, and we fully support the need for society to transition to a lower carbon future. Joining us live now to discuss all this is Catherine REHEIS-BOYD, the president of the Western States Petroleum Association. Catherine REHEIS-BOYD, thank you very much for taking the call here. Give us your reaction, first of all, on this lawsuit as we see these soaring gas prices here in Southern California.
Well, thank you, Frank. Great to be here again. So the effective climate policy that Californians deserve, it's not going to come through meritless lawsuits and political stunts like this one, right? Demonizing our industry is not climate leadership. You know, this should not be about eliminating the very industry that's going to lead this nation into the energy expansion, transition, of evolution, whatever your favorite term is that describes where we are now and where we need to go. So this ongoing coordinated campaign that really is waging meritless politicized lawsuits against frankly, a foundational American industry and its workers is nothing more, in my opinion, than a distraction from the very important conversations and the enormous waste of California taxpayer revenues and resources.
Remember at the end of last year, we were on the air talking about what the governor was talking about then, which in reaction to higher gas prices, it was higher taxes. And indeed, taxes have gone up since then, right? And now this lawsuit obviously putting more pressure on the oil industry. Obviously, the oil industry is a business, and this talk about building more refineries and all that seems to be off the table, even though that's been discussed for decades. Tell us about how the industry is dealing with all this policy pressure and still trying to crank out what we need at the gas pump here.
Yeah, you said it best, Frank. Our job every day, right, is to provide reliable, affordable fuels to every Californian. Otherwise, the economy would stop. And we cannot afford what I call the Diablo Canyon moment like we did on the electricity side because, as you know, cost of crude oil is controlled by OPEC. And if we cannot even get permits in the state of California to drill for the valuable resource we have here, then it is only going to put more pressure on cost of crude oil. It's going to put more greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere because, as you know, crude oil is going to have to come from tankers from, 30, 40 days away from foreign sources that do not have the strict environmental regulations we do. And so none of this makes any sense, Frank. If we were really cared about the cost of fuel, the cost at the pump, we would be doing the absolute opposite of every action we seem to be taking in this state.
Now, of course, the biggest topic of conversation these days is gas prices once again. It was around this time last year that we did see a record high gas prices in L.A. It was blamed on refinery issues, and we seem to be heading toward possibly another record high here now. Can you give us an update on what is happening with the refineries and explain what's happening with these prices here now?
Yeah, if you recall, $1.31 of every gallon of gasoline at the pump is due to California programs, to environmental policies, to taxes and fees, to low carbon fuel standard, cap and trade, all the things that the state has put into place. $1.30 before we even talk about it getting to a refinery to actually, refine it into gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. So if we want to talk about managing and mitigating price volatility, can we please talk about producing more crude oil in California because that will help reduce cost? Can we talk about incentivizing refiners to make the capital investment needed so that we can continue to provide these fuels to the consumers instead of talking about eliminating their very existence and discouraging any investment they would make? There are so many things to deal with market volatility. And again, a lawsuit that sets up an abatement fund, do you think this is going to bring down cost?
Certainly not. And by the way, I just checked while we were speaking here what the price of gas. They say California is an island when it comes to gasoline. We'll get a load of this. In Honolulu, the average price for regular gas is $4.70 a gallon. That's $1.20 lower than what we're paying here in Los Angeles, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They're paying $1.20 a gallon less than we're paying here in the Los Angeles area now.
Because they don't have $1.31 on top of everything that is for climate change policies that we already have, Frank. So we're already doing cap and trade. We're already doing low carbon fuel standard. We're already making the investments into a lower carbon economy for the entire future of the state at $1.30. So now we're going to add additional cost on top of that? It just doesn't make any sense, Frank.
What is the response then going to be from the oil industry to this lawsuit? And is there any hope for consumers here in all this that we will get more supply here, which is obviously anyone that's taking Economics 101 will tell you that. Any hope that this situation is going to turn around anytime soon?
The hope will be if we actually sit down and talk about the energy realities that we're facing and solutions. Okay? That is not, climate policy is for the legislature, the Congress to debate, for us to debate. It's not the court system. So this action is the absolutely wrong step into ensuring California's consumers have less market volatility, not more.
Catherine REHEIS-BOYD, the president of the Western States Petroleum Association, will keep a line open to you with all that's going on. Thank you very much for joining us live here tonight.
Thank you, Frank, for having me.
Thank you very, very much. Folks, let's be honest. Sometimes we find ourselves or a loved one dealing with a massive injury caused by a terrible accident by no fault of our own. Sometimes it's simply being the wrong place at the wrong time. We're all good at preparing for earthquakes and fires, but let's not forget to prepare in case we're involved in a major accident. It's critical to know who to call first. Clark Fielding became an attorney to help you in a crisis. Fielding Law is focused on justice and resources for you because they understand how the system works and what to do in the most horrific situations. I always say put the Fielding Law team in your phone under the word accident. So all you have to do is hit dial. Believe me, you'll feel better having set this up in advance. 833-88-SHARK's the number, 833-88-SHARK. With the population exploding and increased vehicles on the freeways, be proactive, prepare for the worst, and expect the best. But if and when you need help, call Clark Fielding and his team of sharks at 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Again, that's clarkthesharklaw.com. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KABC Los Angeles. Mourning the loss of Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Deputy Ryan Klinkenbrummer, who was shot and killed in his patrol car outside the Palmdale Sheriff's Station over the weekend. Today, the Sheriff's Department announced the arrest of the man they believe responsible for the murder. The arrest came after an hours-long standoff at a residence in Palmdale. For the next 30 days, all donations made to the Association of Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs CARES Foundation will be going to the family of Deputy Ryan Klinkenbrummer. The association, known as ALADS, is the LA County Sheriffs and District Attorneys Union. The CARES Foundation Cops and Relatives Emergency Support is their nonprofit organization helping union members and their families in times of crisis. Joining us now to discuss this tragedy, former LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva is with us live right now. Sheriff, thank you very much for taking the call, and give us your reaction to this awful tragedy that occurred over the weekend.
Oh, it's just gut-wrenching. It's just like a punch in the stomach for the entire organization, for the good people of Palmdale, the family, mom and dad, Mike and Kim, and his fiance. I mean, just engaged 4 days prior to this tragedy. And we went to the hospital Saturday night over there in Lancaster, and just seeing the look on the faces of all the deputies lining the hallways, it's, picture's worth 1,000 words there, and it's hard to describe it, but it's very, very heavy and very sorrowful. So it's a tough day here in LA County.
Sheriff, what can we do to help? I see ALADS has the CARES Foundation and soliciting donations from the public now. What can the public do to help the family? Well,
definitely keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and anything you can do in terms of keeping them around their feet, the fiance, because remember, the fiance, however, not married yet, so she's not entitled to any of the benefits that normally accrue a surviving spouse, for example, in a tragedy like this. So definitely let's make sure she stays, in our thoughts and prayers, and then we follow her and the family throughout this ordeal, and they become part of everyone's extended family. And that's been true of every one of these tragedies we've had throughout the department's history, and unfortunately, it's too frequent.
And sheriff's deputies quickly did arrest the suspect.
You loved Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now get to know her on Give Them Lala.
The Gen Zers, you know, they love to like be Gen Z-y, are calling Margot Robbie mid. On what planet is Margot Robbie a mid? Who's judging this? Like, are women judging it? The forward haircuts?
Yeah.
Don't bring my people into this, or people with the foreheads, babe.
We all agree that she's a 10?
Yes.
Give Them Lala wherever you listen.
Tell us about what you think about how all that came down. As Sheriff Luna noted, the deputies were very patient with this murder suspect.
No, that's true. Of every time when we have a dangerous suspect that's taken into custody, the Special Enforcement Bureau, the SWAT team, they're in no hurry. They want to do things by the book and to preserve life as long as it is possible. And they'll go through quite a lot of measures to ensure that happens, and this is a prime case. So for the critics who claim, oh, the cops are trigger happy, well, this person was successfully handcuffed without any force. So that really destroys their line of criticism.
Certainly, and we just remembered 9/11 recently, and the tremendous gratitude we had for first responders back then, Sheriff, and certainly what is it going to take to turn things around here now to get more support for the Sheriff's Department and for the police here?
Two things need to happen. One, we need to have politicians stop this nonsense about cops are the bad guy and the criminals are the victims. That whole line of argument that politicians have used to try to get reelected, it got old a long time ago, and it has consequences because it sets the stage for people like the suspect, who the family is alleging is a paranoid schizophrenic. They may buy into that rhetoric and say, hey, I guess I'll take one out, and think that somehow it's a rational decision and it's supported because people saying cops are bad. So we got to stop that anti-cop rhetoric. Support law enforcement, hold people accountable, obviously, when they cross the line, but acknowledge that the overwhelming majority are doing the right thing in very trying circumstances. That would be a healthy start. The other one would be we got to bring up our capacity to treat people with mental illness. We're talking residential capacity because we lost that after the Lanterman-Petra Short Act, and all of the institutions that were dismantled, and it was kicked out to the community to provide the alternative. That never happened. So we're going to have to recreate the capacity to treat people with mental illness, because right now they just die on the street or they wind up in jail after doing something horrible.
On the Live with Alex Villanueva, the former sheriff of Los Angeles County, now candidate for LA County Board of Supervisors, District 4. Sheriff, you recently announced your candidacy for the LA County Supervisors. Tell us what you would do to turn especially crime around here in Los Angeles County.
Well, one thing, we need to get rid of George Gascon. He is part and parcel of the problem right there. This whole idea about reimagining public safety has been an absolute failure. The Board of Supervisors agenda about care first, jail last, that is dead on arrival. It's been proven again and again it does not work. We need to uplift and maintain the institutions that hold criminals accountable. And then we need to build up, again, the capacity to treat mental illness, substance abuse, get people off the street, to put a dent into the homeless crisis. We can't be the nation's homeless capital. That is not going to help Los Angeles County. We have to turn that around, and that involves basically the homeless industrial complex. We got to put them out of business. We've got to start separating good nonprofits from the ones that are just collecting a paycheck and further exacerbating the problems on the street. So we got to do all these things together, but we got to start holding crooks accountable. That means repealing Prop 47 and going back to some basics of accountability.
On the Live with former LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva, and we have a lot of business people listening to you this evening, Sheriff. As far as these smash and grabs and these mob attacks on retail stores, what would you do to address that important issue here?
One thing is we need to get the legislature put a proposition on the ballot that repeals Prop 47. That has to happen. We have to have prosecutors that prosecute theft. George Gascon actually legalized theft when he decided not to prosecute misdemeanor shoplifting. Prop 47 got rid of a bunch of laws on the books that law enforcement used successfully to prevent this from happening. So those two things combined leads us to where we're at today. So we have to undo both of these things. Once we do that, we're going to get a hold of it. We need to incentivize corporate America to start taking steps seriously and allowing employees to stop theft like they used to. Remember, they used to have the loss prevention people that actually detain shoplifters? Everyone's kind of decided, we can't do that because, the DA won't hold them accountable. Well, we got to start holding everybody accountable. Corporate America has to do their part as well.
Former Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva, thank you very much for taking the call with us. Former Sheriff of Los Angeles County, now candidate for LA County Board of Supervisors District 4. Sheriff, thank you very much for joining us live here this evening.
You got it, sir.
Thank you very much. And this is Mottek on Money on 790 KABC.
If you have sleep apnea and struggle with CPAP, consider that CPAPs were invented in 1980. Do you even remember 1980? Everyone's house had one telephone. There were like 4 TV channels.
Come on.
You played video games in arcades and watched movies in theaters. GPS was a folded map and a helpful gas station attendant. And social media was inviting the neighbors to come look at your vacation pictures. A lot has changed since 1980. Now, for people who struggle with CPAP, there's Inspire. Inspire is an implanted device that treats sleep apnea inside your body at the click of a remote. It's the only FDA-approved sleep apnea treatment of its kind. While you sleep, Inspire keeps you breathing normally and resting comfortably. No mask, no hose, just sleep. To learn more, visit inspiresleep.com. Inspire, sleep apnea innovation. Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.